On not a formal official meeting, we won't have a thought or a prayer or a pledge or anything. We're just gonna. That's how I see it. Okay. So for the benefit of you two, what I was thinking is the things we talk about here, let's try and capture them so we don't, waste our time. Especially if we're brainstorming with ideas and questions, it's capturing. So I just made it.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
How come we're doing this now and not after all the departments have presented?
I like that question because I have learned in my trips around the sun that if you wait too long, then things tend to fade and disappear in memory. And so I wanted to do this soon after each meeting so that it captures stuff.
So you want to have this meeting every Wednesday in between the,
That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking.
hello,
Yeah, and we could do it another time, if that's more convenient for people, which is like impossible because you can't
yeah. this
get
means that-
everybody all the time. I know. We've already crossed that bridge, which is why I suggested, hey, let's just stick with this time because we've already hammered through this. Let's not sit there another half an hour talking about another meeting. And maybe, since only 1, 2, 3, 4 of us are here, committee, then maybe the other folks can meet on a Saturday or something. Just
We can't meet on a Saturday. We have to have the recording going. I don't know how that's not understood.
We were just debating that, having the recording. I don't want to speak for Doug, but my understanding was because it's a city organized committee that we have to be available for YouTube.
That was the decision council made. Because it is dealing with the budget so that those that aren't able to be here can go back and take a look at it and listen to what was discussed.
anyway, if this time doesn't match up with everybody, then we could do it another time. If people like Ben and the other who are part of the committee.
Well, it's kind of hard to change this time if they're not here to tell us when they can do it.
I know. I'm just saying, it's
Yeah,
an
I get what you're
idea
saying, but
to
I'm
try
just,
to give everybody the opportunity to have an input. And maybe when we're done, I could take pictures of these and we can email it out to people and.
I'm sorry, I'm like, what's the discussion?
We're just getting started.
discussing the meeting and why we're
We're
having.
talking
this
about
meeting.
talking.
That's a meeting about meeting.
I asked why we were having this meeting today and not at the end when all the departments had presented. And Doug had said he would like to have this meeting every Wednesday in between the regular committee meetings to discuss what the last meeting was.
Just a little clarification. What I said was I would like to have it soon after, not necessarily Wednesday. This just seemed to be a convenient time. But to do it soon before memory fades. That's a well-known teaching, learning principle that you review things fairly promptly. So you don't forget. Anyway, that was why I suggested that. Okay,
So that would mean there would be meetings every week.
that's kind of what it's looking like.
Or is that what the committee wants?
Well, it's a good question.
Well, it hasn't been posed to the committee.
Okay.
This is just a stroke of what I thought was inspiration that happened to me. When did I call you this? Monday? Or was it Saturday? I don't know. I don't remember. I could look up my call
Yeah, I
log,
don't even know.
but a few days ago I said, hey, let's do this, which hadn't occurred to me until then. And we thought it was a good idea, so here we are.
So if you have a department that presents in a meeting, and then you have a meeting the week after, those department heads will need to be there.
Not necessarily.
Well, how are you gonna get the questions that you'll inevitably have answered?
We'll save them up. Hopefully, most questions have been answered during the meeting where they had. But if we think of something else, then let's capture it. No. Let's
So
not
when-
think everybody has to be here all the time. to capture good ideas.
So when Doug first approached me with the idea, it was have a meeting so the committee could discuss what they heard from all the department heads and say, you know, this area, I thought possibly there was room for some savings there and just go over what each of us thought we had heard and sort of like start planning a little action plan or have notes of where we want to look back into before we make the list of recommendations to the council, where we might see areas to reduce the budget. That was what I thought the original. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Sometimes I ramble and,
No,
oh, yeah.
okay, anyway, so this is just to capture thoughts that before they vaporize and forget and fade in memory, fade out of memory. Anyway, and I just trying to have some mechanism to do that. I just grabbed some, by the way, my wife used to be a teacher, so we have lots of second line paper. And I just said, takeaways, ideas, questions, action items. In my world that I've been working, we call them action items. Things, who's going to do what?
Follow forward.
Anyway, any other categories otherwise? And if somebody has a better idea of how to document what we've got, and speak up. If I write too slow, you're welcome to take over. So anyway, enough about this meeting, I think. I guess since I started this, you don't have to, this is not Robert's Rules of Order. It's just common sense and courtesy and what was it that you called it?
Etiquette?
Etiquette, yeah. We don't talk on top of each other. But anyway, on the planning with Scott Hess, any impressions, ideas? One thing that I wrote down, and I wrote this down before the meeting, just in looking through all the notes, is all the yellow sheets, is that there seemed to be a lot of duplication of stuff. Through all the departments. And I'm calling them departments. I'm not sure what the right term is, but yellow sheets.
So like just name something for an example.
Travel and training, that was duplicate postage, was on
Well,
almost every sheet.
That was just their portion of.
How do you
Yeah,
want to?
but
Yeah.
Okay,
each department or area has different travel and training, so they're gonna have to have their own.
Yeah.
They're not all going to St. George next month for certification on a certain thing, except people who.
okay. Continuing on with my observations, telephone, seems like everybody has telephone allowances. You know, something I heard, and Ben had the recording, by the way, I'm not recording this on purpose, just other than as a contrary to my usual style. I didn't figure it was an official
No, this is up and down.
meeting now. There was an old saying that I like old sayings because it stood the test of time. Well, there's an old saying that says you can't fight City Hall. Let's not ruin the purpose of this meeting over whether it gets recorded or not. So I understand it's being recorded but not broadcast live. So let's move on rather than get high-centered on that point. What was I talking about?
The phones.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, one thing that I listened to the rest of the recording that recorded the other night, and I think it was during Bryce's, he says they go through a lot of phones and something about people
Wasn't
throwing
that
at each
Nate?
other.
That was Nate.
That was.
Yeah.
He said, as long as people are friendly and get along and they don't throw their phones, and I'm going. Wait, a minute, let me back up.
No, he was
just
joking.
being
No,
funny.
yeah. He just said they're out in the field a lot and their phones drop and break a lot because of their job. Yeah.
Yeah, there was another one toward the end of the meeting. And so anyway, so an idea came to me. And, you know, the rules of brainstorming. Okay. The phones that people are, I assume being a business, that the phones are paid for by the city and assigned or given to the employee, right? And maybe if a person had more ownership for their phone, they wouldn't drop it as much. They take a little bit of care of it.
The problem I have with that fundamental thinking is it's an accusatory tone right from the very beginning. It is the old mentality that because you're a government worker or because you don't own something, you don't take care of it. That is not the case with our employees categorically. The fact that the phones, that they don't have personal financial skin in the game with their phones. First of all, the phones are required for them to do their job. Right, there's all kinds of things on the phones, apps and such like that, that the inspectors and everything use. But I'm going to push back pretty strongly against any attitude that somehow because they either don't own their equipment or they're a government employee, that they are less than conscientious than they would be if it were their own. I guarantee you that they are absolutely conscientious. It just happens when you're out in the field. When you're crawling in and out of things and over things and under things and down in trenches and everything else doing these inspections, stuff happens. And that's a wrong road to go down.
So much for the rules of brainstorming. Anybody else have any ideas?
I had questions about the phone as well.
Please.
And I have concerns about the cost of the phone, because I looked at, $1,600 a year for phones, but I took that $1,600 for 3 phones and divided it, and they're paying like $40 a month, which is about what I pay for mine, which I consider is fairly, because I know my daughter pays $150 a month. So my thought was that I thought that they were doing pretty good as far as not being excessive with the plans that they have for the phones. But I do understand my husband worked a job where he was on call. And his work gave him the option that if he used his phone responsibly, they would provide a phone and he could use it also for his personal phone. Now, my son opts to have 2 phones, so he has a personal phone and a work phone. But it's the same, his is the same kind of problem. He's an electrician. He has to have specific access on his phone for certain apps and internet and that kind of stuff. And now I know with my husband, he never, the phone he used, he never had a phone that was newer than a year or 2 old to begin with. And when it came time for him to get a new phone, he had to go into work and prove that his phone was no longer working before they would give him a new one, which again was a couple of years old. I think I understand what you're saying, and I can totally agree with. I think it's excessive, but I also think in our day and age, we don't survive without our phones, whether it's personal phones or
Yeah,
work
no,
phones.
the only point I thought of, and I think it was brought up, that you should be able to use economies of scale and use government, the fact that you're government and have a contract that says, here's all the phones for the city, and you get a discounted rate because, you know, you're buying in bulk and that kind of thing. I assume that's happening,
It is happening, yeah.
and that the individual lines for
because we're not showing you what the usage of each department is. And so as we're under Mayor Berube and with Jamie at the helm in our finance department, we're getting better and better and better at that detail, so that in a couple of years, we'll have that historic detail that we can go back and say, okay, we've broken, and council's been asking a lot over the last really 5 years. We need that broken out. Yes, we know that this is in this aggregate number over here, but we'd really like to see it as a separate line. And so that detail is slowly coming. It just takes time to get to that. But as they do look at the numbers, the individual, whether it's phone or postage or whatever, they are looking at last year, what they spent last year. And in some cases, what they spent last year is only informative for us to say, like in the planning department, we know that building permit applications and things like that are down this year.
Mhm.
So that you'll see some numbers that are dropped there, because even though we spent X number of dollars on whatever it is, postage is one of them in the planning department. Because we're not anticipating having to send as many notices out to people that certain things are happening around them. So you'll see that those postage numbers have come down. And so we're using current real world realities to inform from where we were last year. If we spent $5 on postage, well, we're at half the permits this year that we were running last year. About $2.5, $3 budget is probably reasonable for the next year. And so you'll see those. And over time, there'll be greater detail that we can go back on.
Don't these yellow sheets, don't they show the projected budget for 2024 and then the 2023 budget, right?
They do, but they don't go
There's the
back to the
differences.
22, the 21, the 20, the 19.
But can you get on the website and see the overall budget for so many years back?
You can see the actual budget.
Well, that's, yeah.
Yeah, and
the
that's
one.
what-
Not the yellow sheets, but
That's what you
actual-
want to do, is look at actuals as much as possible.
Yeah.
And see, since we're still in the middle of this FY 23, I guess, right now.
Coming
you
close to the end, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. I
so
see
you
what
won't
you're
have
saying.
all the actuals in for this year yet. So you'll see what your budget was for this year, but you haven't spent it all yet. And then you're projecting for next year.
Right.
So the only thing you do have is for FY 22. And if you start moving the categories around, then you're like, well, wait a minute,
Mhm.
where is this
Where is
going? Or
it
where
at?
was it before?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But in defense of Jamie, and take it that she is part of my family, she's only.
Is she really?
So be careful.
She's my niece.
I wasn't.
No,
In
complaining.
I
a
know, that
soap
was
kind
just
of
a
way,
joke.
she's my niece.
Okay. As the world turns.
She's only been the financial director for 2 years, and I know that she, at least in my opinion, especially after sitting through the meeting last night, she
Yeah.
is working really hard to make it so that it's much more easily understandable
Right.
for people like me. But she's only got like. the
Well,
2
it's
years
important to have the
follow.
categories and the detail. The problem with that is it kind of messes up your history if you now deviated from what they
Right,
did for 20 years.
right. I understand that. I agree with that.
Makes it hard to trace back.
Yeah,
But I got the same, I think we all got the same idea. That she's doing great effort, sincere
Mhm.
and competent.
Where she explained things in the way, she didn't use all of her educated terms that mean nothing to me.
Highfalutin language.
Yeah, she did it in basic terms that I could understand where she was coming from and why she was doing what she was doing. I appreciated that immensely. You could tell her that.
Yeah.
I will.
So on the subject of phones, I think I'm hearing that they're being well managed, even though everybody contributes to the pot. The pot is used by a central type of phone, get the economies of scale that way. But
I mean, the only other option is you give them a phone allowance and say, use your personal phone and have it forwarded from the city, but I don't know if that's. allowed
Well,
in some
the
cases.
issue that you run into there is, much like this is my business and my personal phone. And because the two are mingled, it could be Saturday at midnight and one of my clients has got a wheelchair. He's been out bar hopping and his wheelchair goes down. He gives me a call, right? And I don't answer it, but it's like the expectation. And so with our inspectors and things like that, there's no way we want home builders and individual homeowners and things like that to have their personal phone number, right? You can imagine the flogging that they would take in some cases. You just have those people that would go nuts at having the business phone, the city phone that is the city phone. Then they know that they're personally secure and can do all of their city business. They can give that number out to a developer, to a home builder, to somebody who's gotten a land use permit to do whatever. They can give that out to them and say, if you have questions, give me a call on this number. And
Then after hours, they put it away, they go home.
yeah, they can turn it off and put
8
it
o'clock in the
away.
morning, they come back.
That's right. That's right. And
So
it's kind of a double-edged sword in that, yeah, you might get up at 8 o'clock in the morning and you have some voicemails that came in at 9, 10 o'clock at night. The positive side is that the residents had a number that they could call and leave that voicemail. Otherwise, we'd have inspectors and employees saying, no, I don't have a phone number. You can call the office and leave me a voicemail. So, but definitely the postage, the phones, anything that you see that's spread across all departments, those are nothing more than the allocation, their allocation of that big, as you put it, economy of scale. Where Verizon, whoever we're using, this is how many phones we need in the city. We get the discounting for that. But then for transparency purposes, we want you to be able to go in and say, well, how much of that $100 total is being used by planning, being used by the mayor, being used by our inspectors or whoever, and you can go in and see the breakdown that gives us that total.
I have another question. Part of the reason my son has two different phones. It's the one phone, the business phone. At any time, the company can ask for that phone, or they can, because it's a business phone, they can go in and research and see where he's spending his time.
Correct.
I know at my husband's job, there was a couple of people that were fired because they were using their phone for very inappropriate. You guys are wonderful workers, not saying anything, but do you have that kind of access to the,
We do have
Business
those
phones?
policies and procedures in place.
doesn't make any difference to anything but me, I guess. I'm
Oh,
curious.
and say from a
Just
city
curious.
council, standpoint, from a grammar request, right?
Mm,
There are texts that go back and forth between council members, the mayor, city staff, residents and things like that. Some things are grammar, that can be grammar, other things can't. Like you can't go in and say, I want to see all the texts on Councilman Swanson's phone for this period of time. Because most of them are personal or business related, have nothing to do with the city.
mhm.
You can, grandma, I want to see all of the city related text on this subject. And then I've got to go through and find those that would relate to that subject, and those can be turned over. With having the city phones, it does absolutely give us that access and the ease of saying, okay, we're going to take a look at your phone. This resident is saying you texted this to them. We're going to check your text messages and see if this nasty message that they say they got was actually sent from your phone.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So anyway, I guess I'm the one that brought up the subject of phones. We talked about it for 20 minutes now.
Okay.
Sounds like it's not something we're pursuing as far as the purpose of this group is concerned. Is that, okay, let's drop that in. Thanks for entertaining the ideas anyway. I don't want to hog the whole show. I got another observation.
Okay, please. Yeah.
under planning commission, AHO, whatever that stands for, hearing officer invoices, $1,000. I'm wondering if those are paper or electronic, how much time it takes, how much money it costs, how many of them, how many per year, those kind of questions of why $1,000 for invoices, and could that be, I'm assuming that's paper invoices. I don't know.
Why am I missing?
It's under planning commission.
Planning.
AHO. You know what, my printer didn't print the bottom half.
Oh,
I might
okay,
have to go to your,
okay.
to your email. Okay.
Maybe that's an opportunity for,
I have no idea what
Going-
it is.
Yeah.
What is it?
What is it?
this here.
Hearing officer invoices.
10-55.
Isn't that where we have to send things to Meg Sanders? Not Meg Sanders. Meg Ryan, where we have the land use hearing.
I think it's to anything that she has to do, but I think, is that on?
Planning commission,
It's on
AHO.
planning, yeah. So that has to be all the stuff that goes to her. And then she puts minutes to it.
By the way, if you guys want to come sit here.
No, it's okay.
He answered that quick.
I'm sure that the invoices themselves are electronic, and this is the anticipated cost of having those hearings when we have somebody that appeals to the state land use authority, which is Meg Ryan, not the actress.
I was just wondering.
Darn.
That's what I said the first time I heard we were having a hearing with Meg Ryan.
You
That's
get a
wonderful.
smile on your face and then it.
Do I dress up? Hello?
Maybe that would be a question to ask Scott Hess, right?
So what is this $1,000?
Yeah, what is it? What does it entail? What does it cover? Is it? Yeah, I don't totally understand it.
So I think Jamie said we should refer to him by the GL number, general line item number 1055-340. And that would be something to ask.
Yeah, that would be something that you forward to Randy, who will take it to
Oh,
Scott.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was the procedure that
that's
was
right.
in place. So you'll take all the questions that come from this, give them to Randy, and he'll make sure that they get to the right.
Suggest that they go to Scott.
Oh, no, you can say, I mean, Scott
Yeah,
would
Randy
probably
said
be the
Scott.
best one, but it may be that Jamie can answer it right off the top of her head, and it makes it quick and easy.
so we have a bunch of items that Chris sent in. Should we go through his things
Yeah.
just to?
Totally, since he
Okay.
knew it wasn't
Yeah.
here.
So there's a list of looks like 8 items. And some of them, I don't know, they're not really like questions to me. They just seem like statements, but I'll just go through them. 1, there's an IT service, tech service that the city uses to help with software, cybersecurity, computer issues. It was mentioned that Bryce Nelson is slowly learning IT stuff to be able to help real time. So I don't know what the question there
They're
is.
just statements, yeah.
Okay, so
I
let's.
wonder if his question is, when Bryce learns enough, will we no longer need the IT tech?
That sounds like maybe where he was going.
That would be my question.
And I think that was what Scott was saying. He's catching on and maybe someday won't need this.
Well, I can tell you, unless Bryce gets the appropriate certifications through IT, that we would continue to have an IT professional.
Even if Bryce gets the appropriate ones, we would probably still keep it because they have a much larger reach than I would just have as a single person. They deal with a lot more of the bigger stuff than I would deal with, such as the cybersecurity, such as our off-site backups. There's a lot of stuff they'll probably always continue to do, even just for liability purposes. It's better to have them do some of the
Third
stuff.
party.
So whereas I'll be more of a entry level helping with computers.
Yeah, and occasionally, if needed, you'd be, yeah.
Yeah,
So who, I guess, Chris can watch the YouTubes. And my question is who's going to pass this on that his questions were answered? We just recommend that he watches
Yeah,
YouTube.
I think we can do that. Someone just message him and say, hey, we went through your. Okay. Moving on, number 2.
Who's Bryce?
I'm right.
You are the Bryce. Okay.
He is the person about whom we are speaking.
Number 2, it was mentioned the city gets discounts on office supplies as it gets in with the overall state cut rates. So that's just a statement, and I remember that being discussed, that the city gets whatever rate the state gets. So number 3, while training remotely may save minor funds for travel expenses, the overall cost of the employee remains, and being at work while doing the training greatly reduces any real content retention, at least when I have done it. Also, interaction with other conference goers on breaks is usually where the true worth of traveling to training pays off, with connections and new ideas are shared. And I gotta say, I agree with that. I mean, you may save a little bit by having someone attend something remotely, but there's a lot of stuff they're potentially missing out on by not being there and not interacting with the other attendees, in my opinion.
You might save the gas and the hotel, but if you're gonna do training online, you're still going to pay the fee for the training, right? So you might save a little bit by doing it that way.
But in my opinion, what you lose by not discussing, with someone else who heard this new system, this new whatever, it's not that
You
great
lose,
of a
but you
payoff.
don't lose
Yeah.
monetary.
I
That's-
think what you're talking about is value versus cost.
Yeah,
There's a lot of value that you get your money's worth.
Yeah, and some, absolutely.
yeah.
Now, if they're going and staying at Marriott or, I don't even
We
know
don't
the
do
names of
Marriott.
the
It's
expensive
the Hyatt
hotels.
or, I mean, the
What's an expensive hotel?
Motel 6 is expensive
The Ritz,
anymore.
yeah.
I know, we used to do that. Then I might have an issue with that if they're staying at some high-end hotel where they could be saving some if they stayed at Holiday Inn or something, but I don't see, I don't know.
No,
I don't see
And
them doing
oftentimes
that.
at this training, because it's large training where there are hundreds of people coming in from all over the state, the organization has discounted rates at the hotel where the training is being, so there isn't that extra gas that's being burnt and everybody is right there. And that's how it is with the Utah League of Cities and Towns. There are discount rates that we get so that we're not paying full fare when we stay there.
So something worth pursuing, or should we just say, thank you very much for the observation and move on?
I'm on the side of training is important
yeah,
and in-person is best. That's personal opinion.
that would be my position also.
And there's also the value from an employee retention piece, right? It's, in the 35 years I've been doing what I do, the trainings where we go, I just attended one last week, Thursday and Friday, over in Denver. The training we could have done online. The networking was invaluable. The connecting with people who surprisingly have longer experience than I do in the business was invaluable. And the ability to focus solely on the training. I'm not in the office. I don't have employees knocking on my door because they've got a question. Everybody knows I'm out of the office, I'm gone. And I'm unreachable from 8 to 5 on these 2 days because we're in training. Really allowed me to focus on the training without worrying about anything else going on.
Yeah. That's a good point also, because if Scott's sitting in his office doing remote training, people are still gonna walk by and like wave a paper at him, asking for his signature or those kind of things. So, yeah. Okay, should I go to the next one? I noted that some computer, cell phone, and small office equipment seems to be hit and miss and hard to budget. To me, computers, laptops should be refreshed on certain timeline versus a knee-jerk reaction waiting until equipment fails. It would help with budgeting as you could spread it out over the years to better track it and flatten the spikes.
I thought that was an excellent suggestion.
I thought
But,
they were doing,
huh?
I thought that's
Well,
kind of what they're
Well,
doing.
didn't, I thought,
But one department needed a computer, so they,
Well,
or a printer.
even
whatever
though
it
you're
was.
refreshing, stuff's still gonna break down before the refresh time sometimes. But if you're refreshing, on a standard, reliability of the equipment, before it breaks, it's usually better. Less downtime.
So, I didn't specifically look for that till I got his question, but we did have, like, a printer was replaced and the whole amount was put in the budget. And laptop was replaced and the whole amount was put in the budget. So I don't see if they're taking that whole amount out at one time, I don't see any past savings. I would think if they know, okay, our printer's gonna last 3 years, so we're gonna put this much away every year. And so it only lasted 2 years, they would have 2/3 of that to use for it, rather than taking the whole amount. Am I making any sense?
but what if it lasts 4 years? And
And then they got
they're,
extra.
well,
Yeah,
yeah, that's another thing, because he's like,
It's your
Stay on
tolerance
this
for
time.
downtime. My home
Well, your
computer, I run
laptop
until
broke
it
down.
dies.
Did you
Right.
have
The business is
downtime?
different.
Because
So,
Yeah.
our printer. Our
your
broke down.
printer, but didn't John have a fund that could pay to replace it right away?
Well, that to be will this next time. That's what
But
the,
he didn't.
That's what, but now they have a plan for that.
and so that's what we entered the budget amendment for, was for that printer, because we didn't,
There wasn't anything.
it wasn't in the budget, even though the money was technically, we had the money, we didn't budget for it this year.
And that's one of the things when something like that happens that we didn't anticipate, like the printer going down. Yeah, the money is there. We have money that we can dip into to make that happen because we've got to have the printer. But we can't just go take the money and go spend it because it wasn't in this year's budget,
Oh, gotcha.
right? So we have to come back to council with a budget amendment saying, okay, we did not plan for this $5,000. I don't remember what the cost of the printer was, but this $5,000 mega printer going down, that wasn't a planned expenditure. So now we have to have a budget amendment that shows we're putting revenue from the general fund into whatever department that printer was in. And then the expenditure coming back out so that it is all, and that's state law. We have to show those budget items.
So that's why you, in your general fund, you have a balance
Yep,
so that it can be used for these. kind
that's one of
things.
the reasons, yes.
But in order to show what you used it for, there has to be an amendment.
That's correct. We can't just go out and spend it. It has to come back to council. There's some few innocuous, small things that'll come out of like petty cash, that kind of thing. But anything, what's the minimum price? Anything over a certain amount?
So
I can't remember what
It
it
seemed
is.
like John had a $5,000 miscellaneous
Yeah,
something or other, but
and to Brenda's point about like saving money each year so we do capitalize that. So we know, hey, in year 3, we're gonna buy a computer that's $2,000. Like we do save up that, you just see it in the savings account, but they do capitalize, like Jamie actually we have a list of things that like we capitalize
huge.
all these things. And so that when it is time to replace that, we do have. the
You do
money
have-
in
So
the
as far as
savings.
we're concerned, we just don't hear about it till it comes up at the budget
Yeah.
amendment.
Yeah, so. you
But
see the
it's not
full
just
price.
all of a sudden this extra surprise you've got. Okay, that makes sense.
And if it's not a surprise, it won't be a budget amendment. It would be in the next, if that laptop is programmed to be replaced this next year, that'll come up as we're doing the budget, and on the yellow sheet for that department, you'll see a new laptop.
Yeah.
Because this is the year that we programmed and we've been saving to pay for that. that we still have to show the expenditure.
So if something lasts longer than programmed for, is it allowed to be used for that, say, fourth year or fifth year and not spend what was programmed, or is the plan such that, okay, it's year 4, we gotta buy this new computer, even though the old one is still cranking along? Are we allowed to use beyond the time limit?
Yeah, in a lot of cases, we do that. I can think of equipment, mowers, like mowers are planned at 5 years, for instance, but, and I know we're talking about.
Right.
Like 5 years.
Compare yourself.
Yeah, but if it's still running and everything's great, then yeah.
And you just leave that money there and it just keeps moving.
And we don't
till-
ask
That's
for it.
correct.
Yeah.
So then at the end of the year, if you have an excess, then it just rolls over, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So things, some of the things though that are more critical, like the laptops and the computers. You know, there's data out there in the IT world that tell you, you can pretty well count on your laptop lasting this long. And you're really kind of chancing it. And with supply chain the way it is right now, I mean, my laptop at work is 3.5 years old. I'm still using it, even though it's, the Bluetooth in it is completely shot. It just, and it can't be fixed.
That wasn't a feature that you.
No, I use that feature a lot, but I no longer can. And the reason I'm still on the laptop is that it's 7 months to get a replacement laptop through suppliers. And so with IT stuff like that, we're planning ahead, and it's like, yeah, we might get through this year, and maybe we will get through the year with the laptop, but we're gonna replace it. Because if it's down, then we have an inspector that can't turn in their reports. We have a police officer that can't, conduct an investigation. We have a finance director that can't do their job. And so on those things that are more critical, we just follow that schedule.
Okay, but some things were appropriate,
Mhm.
if I may put it that way.
If the printer didn't break, they'd still be using the same printer.
Right. When
Or
when
a lawnmower.
a lawnmower that's scheduled to be replaced, it's still working great and running fine. A snowplow, whatever.
Yeah, okay, so is that something we want to put down as a takeaway that they do try to, how can I put it? Speaking of old sayings, World War II saying was popular was use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without. You try and do that where appropriate. Don't
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
Buy it because it's, okay.
Okay, number 6. There should be a better way to deal with credit card and banking fees. 32,000 seems way too high. I was shocked by that too, and maybe that's just what it is, but I don't
And
know.
that's only Jamie,
Yeah,
because if you go look through the budget, the swimming pool puts out a lot of money for credit cards too.
yeah.
Here's the thing to think about. If we go back to expecting checks,
Oh,
Yeah.
nobody, I don't. even have
Most
checkbook
people don't
anymore.
even own
Well,
any, so,
Yeah.
well, and then you start getting bad checks,
yeah.
Oh,
right?
that's true.
And the cost of, skip tracing and all of that you have to do with a bad check and all of those kinds of things.
That's true.
And we do get a government rate, right? We're not paying the full 3 on like a Visa MasterCard, 3.5% roughly that most retailers have to pay. On Amex and Discover, it's like 5%. What is it, 1.5%, Bryce?
That's what Jamie said.
Yeah, it's 1.5%.
Wow.
So if we were paying full retail, we'd be in the $60,000 range. And so you kind of balance you have a bill to pay. It makes it really easy for a resident to pay the bill. We get the money right now. And if they don't pay their bill, we're not out. It's between them and Visa or whoever.
Yeah, so what about the fee for a processing fee? She said they could do it on some things,
And
but not on
Very
every.
limited, and that's limited by state law. Because what ends up happening and has happened in the past is you have a municipality that says, and you have retailers that do this. We have a 1.5% processing fee with Visa, right? We're going to charge you a 2% processing fee.
Mhm.
up front. So we're making 0.5% on every transaction. And they use that as a way through, they're basically taxing their residents without really taxing their residents. It was a way to pad their accounts and have money coming in, an extra, $15,000 or $20,000 a year. Much more if you're a Salt Lake City or a really large place like that. And the state came in and said, no, you can't do that. You can't make money on the bank fees that you get charged, and it's a discounted rate anyway, so.
Yeah, but
She
there's
said
a
she
difference
has-
between making money on, charging more than just passing along the actual cost of doing business with a credit card.
She said, as far as utilities are concerned, it is against the law to pass that on.
Yeah.
My understanding was everything else, it is passed on, but legally utilities, which is, I would think, can be one of the biggest.
Yeah, but so the
fees.
credit card user, is getting 1%, depending on the credit card, they're getting a kickback on paying their own utilities using the credit card.
Right, but that's
So that-
between the user and the credit card.
Yeah,
It's
but
like
there's a cost to using a credit card.
Right, and that's what.
And
we're seeing
it
here,
seems that the credit card companies lobbied the state better than we did.
They have more money than we.
Which is probably very true.
So that's our own state legislatures.
So if you wouldn't mind, Sandy, read what he said again in that note. Maybe he's just surprised that it actually costs that much to
Yeah.
do business.
Well, it's
We
based
have-
on the volume of people paying their utilities using credit card.
But there's also, Jamie also talked about bank fees. Not, it's
Yeah,
not
I
all
poked
credit
at that
card.
though. I would say the majority of that is credit cards
Okay.
fees. Which, yeah, I don't think there was a lot that was just for doing business with a bank. The bank wants to do business with the city.
Mhm.
There was something about going out for bids to different banks and trying to stay local, and there are only two banks in town kind of
Yeah.
thing. And
Because the credit unions
Credit
won't, there's
unions
something
don't-
credit unions won't do that the city
like they
would.
can
want.
do,
Yeah.
won't do, illegal to do, I don't know.
So they have to use a bank.
Bank.
And Wells Fargo's the only one that's,
Well, we go out to bid every 5 years. Next year we'll go out again, but last time it sounds like it was only Wells Fargo and Zions that did it. So when I do it next year, we'll see who we get. But we do want it to be close because I have to go there every
Sure.
day.
Yeah.
You can't ride your bicycle, put it downtown.
Yeah. So, but even with it just right here, it already takes me, it's almost a half hour to get there, get a deposit in and then get
To
back.
cross the street,
Yeah.
that intersection.
Well, and it's all checks. It's the checks that we get.
Yeah.
Is what takes so long. So,
If you figure, just on the size of the processing fees, just on water bills, right, we have 6,900 homes. The average water bill and trash and everything together is $100. That's $700,000 a month. Just for that alone, let alone all the plan check fees and all that kind of good stuff. That it's a lot of money that rolls, that isn't in the budget because it's just, paying utility bills and things like that, but it's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge, the amount of money that that Bryce and his team have to handle. I'm
Okay.
glad we have it.
So is there any takeaway or action, or just thank you very much for bringing up the point that it's
Yeah.
expensive?
Is there already an electronic pay at the city?
There is.
And that's what you would prefer, I would guess.
well, so there's electronic pay, there's still the
Yes and
fee.
no.
There is an ACH payment that if you come in, we can set up for you, and that's probably the best way, because I don't think there's any fees with that.
That's the direct deposit.
That's the direct
automatic
deposit, it comes
withdrawal.
up 25th of every month, I initiate
I
from
don't
before.
like those.
So-
But you have, once it's in place, there's no control, you don't have control. over
Right.
it.
So-
That's,
so I-
that's why people don't like it.
Yeah.
I got a
We've
question
pushed
about
that for years, and people, because they don't have the control over it. And because you have to remember that it's coming out, and if you're somebody who's living paycheck to paycheck. And you forget that
Mhm.
I've got my water bill coming out on the 25th, and it averages
And you got that.
$95 a month, and I thought I had $140 left in my account, and I don't. I've actually got $45 left in my account. And then now I'm getting denied for gas or whatever, some other thing
Because I
that I
forgot.
because I forgot, yeah,
Or if
And-
you
and
got
that-
sick and didn't work 4 days and your check was
that's right,
$200 less than it.
it's still coming
Yeah,
out,
yeah. It's-
yeah.
So going online and just having it like a bank transfer or like checking, that's
So-
not any different than using a credit card, or is it better for the city?
Well, it doesn't really matter for the city. Well, I guess it does because we're covering the 3%, but it does, yeah.
There's still a fee.
If it's going
Still
for
a fee,
express
yeah.
bill pay, which is the only way to do it
Yeah,
online,
Yeah,
that fee's gonna be there.
okay,
get you coming and going.
yep,
Pay for the
So,
convenience.
so the idea
Yeah,
of
take that.
encouraging citizens to use electronic means is like a mixed bag and don't pursue that.
It is faster just for a couple of reasons, because I don't have to actually deal with the payment.
yeah.
So it is it saves time,
Saves your time.
and I think it's saved residents' time, it's easier. and
So
they
if
send out
someone
reminders.
mails it in a check, you gotta have someone open the envelope.
So those get sent to our lockbox, so Wells Fargo has a lockbox service in Seattle. So when we mail out our bills and they come with that envelope, that goes to Seattle. And then they have a thing that'll process it all.
So the only ones that
But you still
we
pay for it.
process are the ones that are out here.
People come and just
That
put.
get
drop
dropped in the
off.
Dropbox.
And
I
we
don't
are-
think there
and we are
would be
paying
anything
for
wrong
that
with
service.
encouraging that,
Yeah,
but, explaining how this works and encouraging that. But in the end, it's gonna be a personal opinion. I don't like the direct deposit, I
Right.
don't use it.
Yeah.
But I think encouraging it and explaining some of it would be
So
great.
see, so
We try to
seeing
do
as
that at least once or twice a year, where we send it out saying, hey, try this or this. Let's say this.
Yeah. I
Oh.
would do it.
okay, so another old saying, that's my third one for the day. When money talks, people listen. So since our charter, if I can call it that, is to come up with ideas that the council may adopt. One could be that we encourage citizens to do it.
With a discount.
And maybe if I was charged a little bit less for doing it, maybe that would persuade me to say, hey, I think I'll do this because I'll get $1 off.
The issue that you run into there is if it's a 1.5% fee and we're charging you that and we give you a discount, that means you're being subsidized by somebody else in the city somewhere else, because we still have to pay the fee. The fee is what the fee is, and the city has to pay it per transaction. If I give you a discount on that transaction fee, the money's still getting paid, it just comes from a different place other than you.
We'll charge you
Even
$1
though-
more than anybody else, and then we'll give you that $1 back.
Even though it costs more, even though it's incremental times 6,900 homes. If it costs 50 cents in time to open the envelope and stamp it and do all the things you do with a check. If I'm saving the city money, shouldn't I see some part of that savings? Not that, I don't know, it just seems like,
Whenever you do something, it's kind of like impact fees. We have to go through a study that demonstrates, we can't just willy-nilly assign a number. That opening the envelope, processing the check costs 43.5 cents. We actually have to go through a study that would probably cost us upwards of 10 grand. Because you'd have to hire a consultant that specializes in that, in calculating that. Because again, cities and municipalities in the past, they use these things, they've used them to their advantage. And so like our impact fees, there's a whole formulary and a process that we have to go through that show that our impact fees are reasonable and that they can be justified by actual costs. And so if we did that, we would have to perform a study to say, here's the data that shows, here's what it actually costs. And it would be years worth of discounts to recoup
the
the cost
ROI
of
on
the
that.
study, right, to even break even.
okay, so not worth pursuing.
Would it save the
Yeah.
city anything if I brought cash in and paid for it? Is there any savings that way?
there's the 1.5%, but then there's the employee time.
Yeah,
But
then you got somebody that's
okay,
got a,
Gotcha, so
and then when you have cash, the more cash you have, the higher risk you have from a fraud standpoint, right? It's,
Some things just are what they are.
Okay, so the ACH idea, just leave alone. Move
Sounds
on,
like
right?
it.
Thank you very much.
well, the city
Well, they-
continues to push those things
Yeah,
every year
encourage people to
regardless.
sign
We
up to have
continue
it
to push it.
automatic,
Yeah.
Cause I would do it.
So it does save some money.
I didn't even
It
realize.
does save
that-
some money
yeah.
for the city, right?
Yeah,
For
Right,
the
yeah,
city, not
yeah.
you,
For the-
but
yeah.
for the city. yeah.
Oh, well, that could be on our list.
and
of
eventually to
suggestions.
you, because it's not, your
Right.
taxes aren't
We'll mail
going.
you a gold star to put on.
There you go.
We
Okay,
can't
I think
afford
there's
the
nothing
gold
wrong with
stars.
encouraging that, though.
yeah.
We're still Manila white
Okay, I'm moving on.
with very bad adhesive.
The HR budget may seem excessive to some, but in my opinion, 20,000 spent annually for 93 employees is a drop in the bucket to help retain them versus spending time and effort finding new employees, getting through the hiring process and then training them. Now, I'll be honest, I thought some of the HR stuff was, when I was listening, I was like, wow, that's a lot. But I also remember like a couple of years ago, the council talking about how they did a survey with city employees. And a large portion of employees were really not happy. They felt unappreciated. And so this was like, a lot of this was set up to try to boost morale, correct? And it wasn't, I don't think this is meant to be like an ongoing, we're gonna, keep having more and more things as the years progress, but it was like it was part of the adjusting salaries also,
Right,
wasn't
part of
it?
the attract and retain
Yes,
policy that we
yeah.
adopted, yeah. And you have to remember too, it's those of our generation, you're a little younger than us, lucky you. Maybe not a whole lot, but I don't know.
Flattery will get him somewhere.
But you're us boomers, we grew up in a different era, different work environments, different work expectations. And I've been fighting it at my business. Because I didn't grow up in that era, right? We didn't have those things. But in today's era, if we're going to be competitive, you've got to have some of these team building activities. And, quite frankly, my turnover has gone down at my business because against my, kicking and screaming, we've implemented some of these things. And it's just like, you know what, guys, if an hour and a half at the bowling alley and a couple of pizzas means
Yeah.
you're a loyal employee and I can pay you 75 cents an hour or less. Okay, then that's what we'll do.
I get it, but it did seem like a lot.
We're just old, Brenda.
Thanks.
We're just old and cranky.
I got both sides of it because my husband's work used to do department dinners at Christmas. Then they
Okay.
said, oh, too much money. We're not going to do it
Yeah.
anymore. We were not happy.
That's right.
This is like the one time of the year you get to go to dinner with the people that you work with.
That's right.
And now,
But
now they're
seeing the
doing a
cost
bunch
of
of them.
Yeah. But most of them are just small, like $400 or $500.
Yeah.
It was that Christmas dinner.
I can
they
tell you though
thousand
that
was
what it's done
excessive.
for the morale amongst employees, again, as a boomer, it's shocking,
Yeah,
the effect that it has.
Yeah.
And it's such a simple thing.
and it's
Um,
provable. You can prove how much turnover.
Our
has
turnover,
improved.
John,
So,
our
yeah,
turnover has
Yeah,
just
It's gone down significantly.
gone down the
Yeah.
drain in a good way, right?
Mhm.
It's just gone down so much from, getting people paid appropriately, competitively to the market and doing those little things that show the appreciation. The other thing that I didn't take into consideration as we thought about these things is as an elected official, you expect to get beat on. pretty regularly, right?
And we do our best.
If, if you run for office and you think that you're not gonna get beat on, then you're really,
Yeah.
something's missing. But unfortunately, the people that get beat on the most for the decisions that we make are these guys. Are the employees, because they're the one interfacing with the resident. And when that resident is ticked off that now that their garbage rate has gone up and they gotta come in and they're paying their bill for the first time since council raised the rate, it's the employees that are getting badgered and beat
Out the
up.
window here.
Right, and they have no control over it, but they're still the ones that have to take the venom. And so these little things, I think, help take that edge off of that and let them know
Yeah.
how much we appreciate
Yeah.
what we end up putting them through.
So one last thing then. Unless, go ahead,
I
sure,
have a
sure.
thought, since we're on the HR thing, and
Mhm.
like you just said, I think I can see both sides. You know. It seems like there's a lot of benefit to it. And so I'm trying to think creatively about how to retain the benefit without a lot of cost, if there's a way to do that. And maybe some of this could be potluck. You know, which would be more involvement. I get to bring my favorite 17-layer bean dip, or my dessert. You know, there's more involvement there, and it reduces the cost of buying all this food. So that's an idea that I thought maybe we could suggest is. And I don't know how much of this is just paid for and that people come and participate, or say you do potlucks. I don't know how much it is, but that was an idea. that I had.
They have, from what I remember, what I'm looking at, they have an activity every quarter. And the holiday party was the 8,000. That was the one that shocked me. That was a lot. Summer party is 1,200, Halloween party 400. They do have Halloween costumes and bowling for turkeys.
Bowling for
And that's
bunnies, I
another,
think is what it's gonna be.
400, that's not much. It's just, what shocked me was that 8,000. But if you've got 93 workers and they're bringing a spouse and you're gonna take him to a prairie schooner,
I think it was
Timberland.
Timberline. To me, that seemed like a little bit excessively luxurious to think that we gotta go to Timberline to feel appreciated. That
I get
I
it.
I don't
would push
think
back.
that nowadays it's not even more expensive to go to McDonald's than Timberline. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Well, one of
You
the
know, that
issues we
is
run into is
salty.
there aren't many places in the Ogden area where we can
Can
feed
accommodate.
200 people
Yeah.
in one place. You have the Eccles Center. Prairie Schooner doesn't have a banquet hall like that. You have Timberline. There really aren't any other places where we can get 200 people together in one big ballroom like that. And it's just not possible.
Would catering be any cheaper?
Ooh, that would be tough, keeping the food, so that it's warm and properly.
And we
There are
did,
ways of doing that.
we did do that at the senior center one year and it was more expensive.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
what I
okay.
wondered.
Oh, that's right. We did that one year.
More expensive than the Timberline?
Yeah. Catering's not cheap.
So then you contract with Timberline to cater it.
Yeah, and then
then you
also
pay more.
Then you pay for
your
your
waiters and-
Own location.
All right.
Okay.
I know. Seems like a lot of money until you start talking about each other individual and realizing what it costs.
So last item he had was, the city needs to stay connected to business through local memberships of organizations, local and others, to maintain and then attract new business, to maintain our tax base as the population increases. I got lost somewhere. in
Just read it
there.
over.
The city needs to stay connected to business through local memberships of organizations, local and others, to maintain and then attract new business, to maintain our tax base as the population increases.
And we are doing that. There's a new business, North Ogden Business Alliance, that's been started up just recently. They're meeting once a month over at, usually at Pizza Pie Cafe. I've attended a couple of their meetings. Christy from Pack Tax, and I was surprised. There was quite a turnout, 20, 30 different businesses. And Terry Bexel, who's the chair of our Economic Development Committee, he was there at there. So there is that contact and that ongoing effort to attract.
So I
see that's
am,
monthly. Did you
Yeah.
say it monthly?
Uh-huh.
I am curious why we are not having the Economic Development Committee meetings anymore.
That I couldn't tell you. John, do you know?
The group, they got a little bogged down on their goals, and I think we've just been waiting for the chair of the group to make a decision on what direction they want to go. So we canceled the last 3, and then we haven't scheduled anymore because they
Maybe
haven't
we need
moved
to revisit
anywhere.
that committee. There is a lot of economic development that will be occurring in the relative near future.
So execs.
Behind Walgreens and America First there. That whole area is getting very close to being developed. There'll be a number of businesses going in there, so the economic development. The biggest hurdle that North Ogden faces in economic development is that we are not a destination city.
And we're limited. We will only build out
Well,
so
and
far.
we're not, I mean, Willard and Perry are really set up better for business than we are because they're on Highway 89. They have pass-through business. We don't have that. You're either coming to North Ogden for a specific reason to come home or to see somebody, or you're leaving North Ogden to go to work. It's very different than, say, Riverdale Road, where you have so much traffic that just passes by. And so when businesses, and trust me, we have spent a lot of effort trying to get, a Texas Roadhouse and those kinds of businesses here, they have their formularies. And when they plug in the numbers, if the light doesn't turn green, they don't come.
Which is why we have so many fast food places rather than your bigger sit-down restaurants.
Well, they're here, not necessarily, they're here because they ran their formulary,
Right.
right? This Arby's here is one of the top performing in the country. It's huge.
I won't go back.
The Starbucks, I mean, you look at the Starbucks here. And when, John, you remember when Starbucks announced they were gonna come, and it's like, well, you have a Starbucks inside Smith's, and their response was, watch. And they built the thing, and then you've got is it the Beans and
Beans and
Brews?
Brews right next door.
Beans and Brews, when they said they were coming, we're like, you're right next door to Starbucks, and they said, watch. Because they know that there's a certain market that refuses to go to Starbucks. It's, you have your Starbucks adherents and you have your anti-Starbucks. It's a strange world, it really is. But the day Beans and Brews open, there's a constant line, just like there is at Starbucks, and it's crazy. And the Starbucks inside Smith's
So there's
is
a demand-
still just as busy.
So there's a demand being met.
Yeah, well, it's like when O'Reilly's came in.
Yeah.
Right?
It's another one.
It was like,
You got
really?
AutoZone.
well, sales at AutoZone are up. And so are sales at O'Reilly,
Doesn't make sense.
right? And if you're into cars at all, are you into cars, Bryce? David, are you into cars? John, I know you are. If you're into cars, do you go to AutoZone or do you go to O'Reilly if you're going to one of the two?
Typically AutoZone.
Yeah, see, I go to O'Reilly. Because it tends to be more motorheads that are working there and understand cars better. And but both of them are doing just swimmingly fine, and they love it, and they're busy.
And that's funny because it's the opposite for me when I go, and I get better service but I usually go to the AutoZone in Ogden.
Now, that's
Shame on you.
that's a
Yeah.
different crew.
Yeah.
That's a,
And
that's a
you said
different.
it
crew.
out loud, John.
Well, I should say that's where I used to go.
Okay.
And so they built my brand
Good
loyalty.
saying.
But see, I went to AutoZone in Ogden too until O'Reilly's opened up.
Yeah.
And because I know the type of people that O'Reilly typically hires. And they know vehicles, I can go in and say, you know, I've got that little doohickey thingamajig, and I show them a picture, and they go, oh, yeah, it's the flux capacitor 7.9. And you're like, yes, that's exactly what I need. Well, you'll need an O-ring with that, and you're like, okay, give me the O-ring.
So is finding the interest there behind Walgreens and America First? I'm wondering if that interest is because it's more of a main road rather
Yes.
than Washington, like you say, where people. are
It
just
has
going
access
around.
off of 3 rather busy streets,
'Cause we
2700,
have shops that
Washington,
we
and
can't-
2550,
We can't fill on Washington.
and 300 West.
That makes sense.
And it's a kind of a master plan development. So there's a whole bunch of things planned to go in there and
If I may try to rein the cats back in. Story here. I think this last 5 minutes was sparked by you're saying what happened to the economic development meetings, why aren't they happening anymore? Who said that? You?
I did,
Yeah,
because
And so
the other
could-
question was on business. Why are we not
Could-
bringing businesses?
could one of our recommendations or ideas be to fire that back up?
I think that would be great. I used to listen to them quite often.
Scott
Economic
Hess has a new title,
Mhm.
right? And part of that is economic development. So that's the step.
Okay, so we'll make that a,
And I think Dow House is the councilman that is over that.
I believe that's correct.
okay. I think we come up with something productive. Anything else or?
Hey, Chris,
That was Chris's things. Does
Okay, how
anybody
about-
else?
Meeting adjourned.
I'm hesitating to bring out all my questions.
No, please do. That's what we're here for.
Just develop a thick skin. You gotta have a thick skin to sit here.
I'm getting calluses. Guaranteed.
Okay.
Your calluses are gonna need calluses.
That was his own back end.
Somebody else come up with something while I'm.
I did have a question about this. So you mentioned the city, the League of Cities and Towns, and there's, seemed like there were several $1,000s dues.
Membership, yeah.
And what is the value out of that?
They are, the biggest value we get out of them is lobbying. If you can imagine up on Capitol Hill,
So that 2,000 or what, how much was it? She's
I
looking
thought it
it
was
up.
13.
It's 13 and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's paying for jazz tickets and timber mines and whatever for
No,
legislators.
no.
Lobbies.
that's paying for attorneys and professional lobbyists who, accountants, all kinds of professionals that watch Capitol Hill and the bills that are being produced up there. Because what happens is you have because of the power, the legislative power and influence and the number of representatives that are elected from Salt Lake City, right? Salt Lake County, Utah County, the powerhouses. Us smaller communities, we get run over, absolutely run over. So it's kind of like if you are, you're a small hardware store, you might belong to the buying group Ace Hardware, right? You're independently owned. And the reason you belong to that is because of economies of scale, right? You have more influence. So at Capitol Hill, when the lobbyists for the Salt Lake City, Salt Lake County, Utah County, the big mega counties, where more than 3/4 of the state's population live, when they're lobbying the legislatures to do something that is detrimental to us, how many are in the league? How many cities?
There's 182 cities in town, and I think all but
All but
one,
one.
and maybe it's 185.
I think it's West Valley City is the only one that isn't.
So the
in there.
big cities are in there too?
No,
Yeah,
Oh, they are?
Provo, Ogden,
Provo,
Salt Lake are all
yeah.
members, yeah. The counties are not. Counties are a separate
They,
organization.
what the Utah League does is they push back against the legislature. And it's pretty powerful what they can get done. Every year there's legislation that will absolutely kill cities and towns from a cost perspective. You know, one of them this last year was early discussion of eliminating the 1% local sales tax on food. About half of the sales tax we get in North Ogden comes from groceries,
Bought in Norfolk.
bought here at Lee's or at Smith's. And if the state in its effort to eliminate some tax on food had eliminated the local portion of it, they did eliminate some of the state portion of it, but not the local portion. If they had eliminated that 1% local portion, our sales tax would have gone from 4.7 projected next year down to half that. And then sales tax is, geez, it's more than 50% of our overall general fund budget. So if we lose, that'd be a quarter of our budget here in the city that would just evaporate overnight.
But we will still lose
So-
money because the state won't be collecting as much sales tax, right?
That's correct, but it's a much smaller impact, right?
So if I'm understanding right, it's kind of an attractive illusion that people say, oh, let's cut sales tax. Hooray, only 2% instead of 4% or whatever. And so we think we're getting better off, but not realizing the city that we live in can no longer afford to pay their city employees.
If you're in
So it's
Riverdale,
like a hidden,
It's more of a progressive
yeah,
idea. So people who spend more of their income on food are getting a break, but it's probably going to be passed on to your property tax or income tax or somewhere else.
if you're in Riverdale, you know, they're roughly $10-11 million general fund budget, which is about the same as ours with much less of the population because they have so much in sales tax. 8.5 million of that is sales tax. So when, you know, if you're in Riverdale and the state says, oh, we're going to reduce sales tax. What you're telling a city like Riverdale is you're going to have to cut some services because you're about to lose a big chunk of money.
I think you told us about that. a few-
RC Willie, when RC Willie left $800,000 in a, you know, annually, right out of their budget. So, you know, you figure almost, well, of the sales tax portion, 10% of their sales tax gone from one business relocating to another community. That's a huge chunk to have to try to make up.
So the point of this is that this lobbying that happens is worth it to us. To defend
I
ourselves.
believe absolutely it is.
Didn't Jamie say last night that some of the ideas that CPI or whatever it was, that some of the ideas she got
It's the
from
more
the league,
complex algorithm.
but she got some of those ideas
That came
from
from the
the
league.
league.
That's correct.
So it's beyond just lobbying. There are things that the city can gain from that.
Yeah.
As a city personally.
And you can always go on to the Utah League of Cities and Towns, ulct.org, John?
Yeah, ulct.org.
Yeah, ulct.org. And you can go on there and you can get their bill tracker. I mean, just go through the tabs. All the information is right there, everything that they do. You know, if there's a bill that pops up that's real, there it is right there on the screen there. Under their advocacy. You know, if the legislature pops a bill up that they were kind of sneaking in, they'll send out a text to all of us and they'll say, look, you got to contact your legislatures and tell them, you know, back off of this bill, and within minutes.
All
those four-
bills?
Any bill that seems
So-
like it's going to be detrimental.
So this
to the city.
13,000 a year, then is, you're saying is basically paying for the staff and the organization.
That's that watchdog.
Yeah.
And is it different for the size of your city?
Yes, the bigger your city, the more you pay.
It's population.
And they've been, John, I don't know about your opinion, but, you know, in the 9 years I've been doing council, we've been involved with ULCT and their value is proven year after year after year.
And they also, on top of the advocacy, do training and things. But it's like the Dairy Farmers of America, or it's just a group that gets all the like-minded or the aligned folks together.
And when you're a legislature up on the hill and you're pushing a bill and the ULCT walks in to oppose you, you know that you're in for a fight.
Well, and that's what I wonder is how much, is there that much unity between all the members? You know, if you still have Salt Lake and
Well, big cities
Provo
and
and-
little cities.
yeah,
So they build a consensus with the group. In fact, you can see, I'll try and zoom in a little bit, but as they
I
go
guess
through
if you
the,
don't have consensus, then you're gonna leave.
well, and what
And
they'll do
there's
is,
always some breakout, right? There's always, this is the league consensus. And there's not everybody, it's never a unanimous deal. I can't remember anything that's ever been unanimous. But still, if you're a legislator and the league walks in and you know that they're opposing you, you know that you've got a fight on your hands.
Okay, can I change the subject?
Go.
I heard on recording that Kate, that's the one who said, "You're welcome to come to one of our activities." I'm wondering when the next city activity is, that
Employee activity.
employee activity, like, you know, the quarterly ones.
Trying to get a free mail.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I want to get some of my tax money back.
He wants a free turkey.
it'll be the summer barbecue at the pool in June.
Is there a date?
There is, I don't know it off the top of my head. I think it's towards the end, 20
But
something.
assuming I behave myself.
Yeah.
Well, we do have all of our police officers there.
Oh,
Generally,
really?
on the street. They're usually in uniform and carrying.
Can we
so-
do a practical joke and throw in handcuffs or whatever?
Well, we'll have our pool director there. We can do all kinds of things. We could cuff him, put the ankle straps on and then throw him down the side.
And say, okay, Houdini, get out of this one.
Yeah, yeah. How long can you hold your breath?
My only
Okay.
concern for this is, I'm sure that the city doesn't want to give the impression that residents are going to be
It really isn't a resident.
right. But
It's
we,
not open to residents.
right,
But I did hear what she said.
she did, she did.
No,
Well, that's because
I wanna
you're-
come to the
that's because
Christmas
you're on
dinner
the
then.
committee.
that's right. I want to see what this is all about. Get a. It just is staying with me. And that is the idea of using personal vehicles for some business purposes. And I get why we have policemen driving police vehicles to their house. That in effect kind of becomes a personal vehicle and the wonderful benefit there. But for some positions that are relatively low miles, and I think that was even admitted, stated,
Building inspectors.
maybe that was it, yeah, that these are low mileage vehicles. That the impact, if I were a building inspector and I knew I was gonna drive, 1 mile here and a half mile there and 5 miles here, pretty much within the city, and that I was gonna get reimbursed. I forget what the correction, I don't know what the current government reimbursement rate is. I know
It's
at
still
one time it
58
was-
and a half cents a mile.
Okay. But that would tell me, oh, I'm gonna get reimbursed 58.5 cents per mile. And if I put, say, 1,000 miles per year on city business, maybe I would cotton to that idea. If it would save the city paying for a vehicle that sits most of the time.
I may have missed it, but I thought he said it was 50,000 a year. And if it's
I heard
50,000 a year.
50,000 miles?
What-
No.
About 5.
Oh, five, oh,
Go about-
I just added a couple zeros, that's all.
Yeah, kind
It's
of like
okay.
the figure we had last night for 1 0 made a lot of difference.
Yeah.
Huge
Anyway,
difference.
that idea is sticking with me that, that maybe we could suggest that to the council, say, hey, these people that have city vehicles and are putting relatively low miles, let's not provide a city vehicle, but let's ask that you use your personal vehicle, reimburse you, so you don't, you're not paying for your own gas and maintenance, all those things that the 58 cents goes toward. And maybe that would be an economical and attractive thing. Plus, then I get to use my vehicle. I can outfit it with all the tools and things I need. I'm not sharing it with anybody.
Which is what I don't want, because I don't want your tools and, I don't want my husband's tools in my car.
Okay, but, and your situation, and I think I heard somebody say, well, my truck will barely make it into
That's
the
what he
city.
said.
Well, maybe that person needs to get a dependable truck for other reasons than just,
Yeah, but that,
You can't tell him
that's
that.
his prerogative, whether
Right.
he does or not.
right, okay. So it's an idea that I think, and you tell me if I'm way off base or if I'm just whatever, but has some merit that where appropriate, maybe personal vehicles could be used and reimbursed.
Well,
Where the
aside
mi-
from,
where the mileage-
aside from police,
Where the mileage is. I'm not talking.
Yeah.
how many vehicles does the city have?
Oh, that's a good question.
You want me to speak on this?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have
Oh, he's
23
probably asking
vehicles
John.
that are daily use vehicles. I mean, we have other ones, lift trucks, different things like that. But we have
But they're
23.
Right.
not police vehicles.
Yeah,
Well,
not.
And not
23,
snow
Not
plows.
snow plows,
Yeah.
not road graders, not anything like
I'm
that.
just talking daily use. vehicles. We have
23 non-police vehicles.
Yes. The vehicles that you guys are speaking of about with the inspectors, they are in a lease program through a company called Bancorp. And so the way that the lease works is we pay a lease rate every year, which is about $2,100 per vehicle.
A
So-
year,
Yeah, so
okay?
so I know, I understand what you're saying, but I think you're talking close to $3,000 we'd be paying out in just in the 58 cents a mile.
Gotcha.
If we were doing that, we would actually be paying more, but we pay about $2,100 per vehicle for their vehicles that they have down there. And then we actually, because they're low miles, we give them back to Bancorp, and Bancorp actually turns around and sells them. And then we get the residual from that vehicle. And so in a lot of cases, like last year, the vehicles were really good. So when we rotated those out, the Traverses that they drive, we actually got like $3,300 back. So we paid $2,100 and we actually got paid to the vehicle. Basically, I mean, besides gas and those things.
So if I figure it out, 58 cents a mile, is that what you said? For 5,000 miles a year is $2,900. And so if they use their personal car, they would we pay more in miles than what you're paying to lease.
Besides gas, like we.
Well, you pay for gas either way, right?
No,
Oh, no, because the
58
cents
cents
is
includes gas and maintenance.
Gotcha.
The other
I'm
piece you
slow, I
have,
get it eventually.
the other piece that you have to work into that is liability insurance.
Ah,
That's a huge piece, because if somebody, I guarantee you, that if somebody in their personal vehicle is anywhere near North Ogden, and they get in an accident, and an attorney finds out that it's also used for
City.
city business, there's going to be an effort to show that they were on city time. And the city gets drug into it. And I would imagine our insurance carrier will also have some pretty strict standards on what kind of vehicle they would cover under the city's liability and what they would not. I mean, if you've got an old clunker that, you know, it works just fine, the reality is it's a more liable vehicle, right? It's more likely to break down. It's more likely to have mechanical failure that leads to an accident. Those kinds of things. There's all of this that gets thrown into that whole mix. For me, as a council member, having that absolute clear delineation so that our employees are not at risk, and more importantly, the city is not at risk from a lawsuit, is worth every penny of it.
I think to your point, Doug, I don't have a problem with questioning the council on it and let the council
Yeah, I'm
decide
just
what
one
it's
council
worth.
member.
You know, I think the explanation here is that cost wise, it's about the same. But, you know, maybe one of the workers would be willing to use our own car if it's brought up to them. I don't know. I mean, suggestions don't hurt, right?
Well, I'm gonna go for the 3-hour.
What else you got?
Don't feel the need to filibuster.
You'll notice how quickly I'm speaking up. I'm being quiet on purpose.
Was there other things that you wanted to bring up or question? I mean, do it while we're here.
Let me ask what might be the last question. Do you think this is worth it? Was this a good idea?
Do we think this
We-
committee is worth
this-
it or this specific meeting?
This in between review and due?
Well, but I think it's gonna be different every single time. I mean, because the last meeting we had were, these aren't like giant numbers. I mean, honestly, when Scott Hess tells me that he's lost a whole entire person and he's not asking to replace them, and his job has grown, he's got more responsibilities, and he's not complaining, I sort of feel like if he's gonna work his butt off, he's not gonna try to get a laptop that he doesn't need. I mean, he truly is mindful of this, our tax dollars. So I don't see, you know, from the people that presented last time, I don't see a lot of places where it looks like,
A lot of low hanging fruit.
right, but
But that
who
doesn't mean
knows?
next week will be
Yeah, who
different.
knows next Wednesday's meeting? I mean, whoever gets up and speaks, we might be sitting here, oh, no, hang on, you just don't know.
Aren't you next week, Dave?
Yeah, that's why.
I was giving him a hard time.
Well, I wasn't far off, I was on.
Love it.
I
What's up, Bryson? Bryson looking at you.
I don't have a problem
So-
with having this meeting. It
This
gets,
in between
it
meeting.
gets more of my questions answered. But I guess the concern that I have, because you don't want to meet with like John and Phil. I like them there because of the answers that they give us.
And
So
I
it gets
like
more
that
of my
too.
questions answered.
I just felt dictated to, you know, I didn't recall signing up for a dictatorship, no. This was a voluntary thing, and we're here because we want to be here, and being told we have to do this a certain way, kind of pushes the balance. Of Doug Anderson.
But I think
Yeah, but-
we've been able to be very open with our.
I know,
comments.
I'm kind of getting over my.
Well, and every citizen of the city isn't getting an
Have the same
opportunity
question.
to talk to every department head and grill them on. So you're being offered that opportunity with certain,
Yeah,
I think it's all.
I kind of worry
fair.
about maybe taking their time.
Yeah, I agree.
Because they got jobs to do.
But I
Well-
do feel like there needs to be somebody here who can answer our questions. Otherwise, we would have had this whole meeting and
Even
gone
in
back
this-
with,
Even in this in-between. meeting.
well, yeah, because for me today, there was questions answered that it was decided, okay, then that's not something to bring up. Where if we wouldn't have that answer, we would have brought it up again and had to go through the whole thing again at another meeting, so.
So if we were to take a vote, what would the vote be on these in-between chatting chat sessions? Do we do this again
Well,
2 weeks from
tell you
now?
the truth, I have a hard time even making this meeting. Because I have a job I'm supposed to be at.
So that makes him leave his
Yeah.
job every Wednesday.
And me
And,
too.
yeah.
Time I
And
have to
Phil or
time
whoever,
before.
John, whoever we've
There-
got.
There's a
coming.
cost, and if I didn't think this was a worthwhile thing, I'd just.
I
wouldn't even
wonder,
Finish that sentence.
while we sit through the meeting with the department heads and we ask our questions, the only issue I get with this is that it takes us 2 hours. Could we take a half an hour, but see, it's still, never mind. It still
So
took
like
us 2
after
hours
the
to go,
meeting?
yeah, yeah, and then ask
Just
our.
do a quick recap and see if anyone has.
Yeah, but time wise, that's not gonna be any better or any different than having to just.
Well,
because we still take
let's just throw it out there and say, let's try it this coming week. If Dave doesn't talk for 2
Well,
hours,
I'm gonna be the only one presenting next week,
Yeah.
so it'll be a little different in the fact that you. whatever
Yeah.
questions you have.
Yeah, but we know you like to talk.
I-
It's still-
It's not 3 hours.
Well, that's what it would entail if we had our own private meeting after the big meeting. I think we would be here for a long time. But like I said, I'm learning things
Even
with,
today,
yes, yeah,
and me too.
absolutely. So I'm not against it, but I don't have a job that I have to worry about
yeah,
coming or leaving. So, I'm in a different position than you guys are.
How about you?
I can move my schedule around. So like I worked today, but I told them I would be getting off at 2, a little bit after 2, so.
And same here, I have a job that I fortunately have the ability to massage my schedule somewhat, as long as I get my job done.
Obviously Ben doesn't, because he's not here.
Yeah,
Clark said it's very difficult for him. Chris, I think, was going out of town.
Chris
Or is it?
wouldn't be
for work?
back in, he's in Magna all week and wouldn't be back to
So his is
Oklahoma
work
until
too. so
5 or 6, so, yeah. I
that's
don't
gonna
know,
be
I don't know if
an
it's
issue.
just because he's doing that this week and the rest of the time would be different, I don't know. But what about Phil and John?
Phil's got a job that he leaves. John is here and he's great to do this, but we just took out 2 hours out of his normal job. Same with Dave, same with Bryce. We've just taken 2 hours that they're gonna, at some point, have to make up in their regular job.
Well, but these two behind me, they came.
Yeah, they came willingly, but he's like,
Nothing offensive, but who invited you? I mean, why are you here?
well, Dave is
I
like
didn't know you
John's
were gonna be here,
assistant.
honestly. I seriously did not expect anybody but
Mhm.
these people.
So I came for a couple of reasons. One, I'm learning. I'm still fairly new in my position and I'm going through the same process as you guys in my own thing. I'm interested to see what ideas you guys have. Also, like usually I'm off at 3, so.
So we're keeping you from family then.
but it's okay.
Tell me starting to growl a little bit. maybe.
Yeah,
Mine too.
but I'm
Well,
here to
that's
learn and
good,
take
that-
information.
Yeah,
So.
that's great.
You're going the extra mile. to-
Who's your
to be a
boss?
better employee.
Was John your boss?
Yeah.
John, he's really doing a good job.
Bryce is doing
He's
a good
coming
job.
extra.
He
No.
is, he fixed the thing where
And I'm John.
next week, we're really gonna hear Charlotte's voice, 'cause
You got
thanks,
it.
Bryce.
Don't need to tell me.
So I asked a
Charlotte,
question,
I was kidding.
so I asked a question about 5 minutes ago, shall we do this again 2 weeks from today?
My opinion was I'm fine,
I'm good.
You're gonna abstain?
but is it worth it to
Well,
do this with just 3?
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
out of town next week, so I'm not gonna be here next week.
We can read the minutes. So your vote is do it or don't do it? Worth it or not?
Are you gonna take time off
Whether you can
every
come or
Wednesday?
not,
Yeah, I'm missing another meeting at work to come here, but that's fine.
He's too nice to say no, he doesn't want to take every Wednesday off. because that
But we
affects
only-
his job.
There's only a few more, Anyway.
This is not gonna last forever.
yeah, so,
Yeah.
Well, I think it's important to also ask, can you have an effective committee meeting when you have half or more of your committee that isn't here?
Right,
Yeah.
is it worth
Right,
having?
if it's
3 or
just
4
the
of us?
3 or 4 of you that are here every time, this is really a committee meeting,
yeah.
right? And
And then
it's,
is it worth taking John and?
are you
Dave?
getting the input? Because we're gonna be here at every meeting, right? That the city's gonna be here. John will be here to run the equipment. I'll be here as I can. I'm on spring break jeeping and outside of Las Vegas next week, bouncing up and down Red Rock. But, you know, Bryce will likely be here, John will be here, I'll be here when we can, specifically to answer questions, right?
So can we ask the same questions in the regular Wednesday meeting without having?
Well,
this?
we had talked about at the beginning that there would be a kind of a process that when questions came up from a meeting, those would be given to Randy, and then those would
Yeah.
go to the appropriate department heads, to John and to David, to Bryce, to whoever, so that those, so that those could be answered. What that doesn't allow for is discussion, right? Live discussion. But that's also something to consider.
But we also, I speak for myself, I also got all of the questions I had at the last meeting answered from the department heads.
Right.
So I can see, you know, where Chris had maybe some extra questions and Doug did. If I have an extra question, I can see doing the emailing.
Send it to Randy and then let
But
it
I
go up.
think, yeah, but I think it needs to be, in my opinion, it needs to be, we email Randy and everybody on this committee, so we all have the question.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
then that comes back to us the same way that we all get the answer. But time-wise, I think that would be more efficient than having this extra meeting. I like this extra meeting because I like what I learned, but I don't know that it's worth the time
Yeah.
for everybody, especially if you have to take off work.
So why can't we though just say this coming Wednesday, when Dave's done, we'll try to, whatever members are there, we'll try to real quick amongst us
Hang out a little
discuss
quick
what,
recap.
what he said and say, okay, now that he's done, are there any questions somebody has, so we can all, and
And
maybe it
you'll
won't
have the
take
yellow
that
sheets
long.
ahead of time.
Yeah,
So you can look at those and be asking, you know, what about this expense and that, and have those questions ready.
yeah.
David can be, because you know how David just likes to talk forever and ever and ever. I'm
And
trying to
sometimes
be more
because
like me where he doesn't talk so much.
I'm a little slow with
I
this kind of
noticed.
stuff.
Yeah.
You know. take
So
it
how
down.
does that sound?
That's-
Let's
how I
try that
am.
this time, and if that doesn't work out, we have one more meeting and
Then we can do that. I think that's a good
when are
idea.
we getting the next yellow sheets, John?
Brenda, maybe I'm like you, it takes me a while for things to kind of sink in. and process.
Supposed to be this afternoon, but I haven't done them yet.
Yeah.
That's our fault.
I'll,
Sometimes the
but
question-
Tomorrow
tomorrow
sometime?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I had forgotten that we have access to email Randy and get some.
Yeah.
answers.
That also gives every committee member, whether they can be here or not, including myself when I can't be here too, because I've missed a couple. Well, after this next week, I will have missed a couple. And it gives us all an opportunity to see the questions that are being asked, and for the department heads and those that have the answer to formulate a good, concise answer that helps you understand what's going on.
Mhm.
Okay, so
Adios.
Thanks for
So
coming.
Cindy, I like your idea, but just hang out a little bit afterwards, like kind of a
How do you feel about tonight's?
Post meetings.
Mhm.
and see how that goes. Not have this meeting in 2 weeks, not necessarily unless a week from today, we feel like, oh, you'll better talk again in
Mhm.
7 days. Agreed?
Sounds good.
Okay,
Yeah, that does sound good.
I'm gonna talk now.
Okay.
I only got one question and a couple of suggestions. Seeing as it was my idea to do this meeting, I'll put out some minutes. Minutes meaning, few notes.
And
Decided, and if I make mistakes, please feel free to put that, say, Doug, that's not what I said. But I'm trying my best.
Shannon, yeah, but I'm not concerned about minutes because it is on YouTube. If you want to do the minutes, that's great, but if I have a question, I'll go find what I said wrong on YouTube.
All right.
Thanks for sacrificing your time, folks.
You too.